having a hair crisis today, but you know, just excuse that. Welcome to Forensic Science Sunday, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. Today's video will be featuring the Hella palette from Odin's Eye Cosmetics in collaboration with Angelica Niche. I've already created one look with this palette before. If you guys would like to see the look I created, I'll leave it linked right here on the screen somewhere. But I thought I'd do another look because I promised you guys that I would, and I'm just not into wasting money and buying all these palettes and only doing one look. So girl, we gotta get my money's worth, okay? All the other products I'm using in this video will be linked in the description below. Please read the disclaimer. I am not a professional makeup artist, nor am I a professional forensic pathologist. I'm just the average girl at home like you, playing in my makeup. Sometimes I do my nails and other random ish while I talk about a true crime case. So if that's something you're into, then you are more than welcome to stick around and hit the subscribe button. Also, quick reminder, the comment section is a privilege. Don't fuck it up. Now let's get into today's case. Now this all takes place in 1991 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where 19-year-old Heather Stigliano lived. Now Heather, she was a beautiful, vivacious, driven young woman. She was very talented. She was a singer. Ever since Heather was a child, she always knew that she would be in the entertainment industry. She was very much into singing and dance and theater and just anything artsy related. And she always dreamed of, you know, moving somewhere else and becoming a singer. That was her dream. That was her goal. Her mother said that she was an amazing singer, that she could really blow. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but it's not what you think it is. That's just, I don't know. When somebody can sing well, we say that girl can blow, and that means she can sing well. Not the dirty things you're thinking about. So she could really sing, and so it wasn't a surprise to her friends and family when she decided to take singing seriously and to pursue it as a career right after high school. However, her mother had gone through a recent divorce, so Heather decided to hold off her plans for a year until her mother was feeling better and was back on her feet, because, you know, her mother, divorces are difficult. So I think she did the noble thing by sticking by her mom's side while her mom was going through this difficult time and losing someone. Because I couldn't imagine, you know, your marriage going through a divorce and having to deal with and mourn that, and then also your child moving out and moving somewhere else. During that year, Heather made plans. She looked at apartments and she researched different locations that she would want to move to, and she decided to move to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. She decided on Myrtle Beach because it was the hot spot for the entertainment industry. It was a tourist spot. A lot of people came up to see shows, so they would need a lot of talent and a lot of singers and actors. So she chose that location. She was able to secure herself a job and a one-bedroom apartment right in the area that she would need to be in to further her career. And the fact that she already had friends there made her decision even more easier to make. She just felt like this was a good time and the perfect place to get her career going. Heather, she rented a small bedroom apartment near the beach, and it was the perfect spot for her. I mean, it was right in the middle of everything, close to her job. It was everything that she needed, close to her friends, everything. I mean, everything supported this career at the time. And her waitressing job allowed her to earn additional money on the side while she was trying to get her, you know, her startup in the industry. Now, the entertainment industry had not been very good to Heather at all, and she was finding it very difficult to find gigs to work. She was mostly working her waitressing job and paying for her apartment, pretty much just living like a normal person, paying to survive. And this happens a lot, believe it or not, in the entertainment industry, especially if you come out to LA. I mean, whenever there's a place where there's a lot of opportunities, there's usually also a lot of people, so that means competition. And so you just have to take that into consideration. So Heather, she wasn't really happy with the way things were going in her career. And she called her mother and told her, you know, Mom, like, I'm not really happy with what's going on out here. She was no longer thinking of being in the entertainment industry anymore and following her dreams and being a singer because it was just too difficult. She basically was feeling very, very discouraged and she was ready to quit. And to the point where her mother says she was begging her to come out there, like, Mom, you know, come down here because I can't do this anymore. She also was going through a lot of things personally that was really just getting to her. And I'm pretty sure like everything started to just come at a head at once. She just felt like she really needed that additional support. A week after she had that conversation with her mother, her friends had tried to call her and they were unable to get in contact with her. After numerous failed attempts of trying to get in contact with her, they decided that they would just go over to her apartment and see if she was okay because they knew what she was going through at that time. And they just wanted to make sure their friend was okay, you know, and check on her. But when they got to the apartment and they knocked on the door, no one answered. And so they were very, very scared at this point. And they didn't see her car in the driveway. Her car was not at the apartment, but she also wasn't at work. So it was just strange. So they walked around the apartment. They were looking in, you know, peeking into the window of the apartment, trying to see if they could see her, and they couldn't see anything. After knocking on the door and ringing the doorbell and nobody answering, they decided they were just going to go into the apartment at this point because they were afraid that something had happened to their friend. And so they entered the apartment, and that is when they found Heather's lifeless body laying on the kitchen floor. In absolute horror, they contact police. Investigators show up to the scene of the crime, and the first thing that they notice is that Heather's car is missing. Although Heather's body is there, her car is missing. The apartment appeared to be ransacked. They also noticed that there was no sign of forced entry, so it appeared as though whoever came into the apartment must have known her. Heather's television, a 35mm camera, and her wallet was all missing, and it was apparent to police that it had been stolen. Investigators also found small pieces of black plastic scattered around the crime scene, all around Heather's body. It was just odd because they couldn't figure out, you know, where it came from. They also found an iron that was broken. Clothes were thrown everywhere out of the drawers. So it did look like a robbery that had gone wrong, and they started to suspect that maybe that was the case. But they also just felt like there was something else going on too, so they weren't sure what happened. When they found Heather's body, her head was propped up on a pillow, which investigators thought that was pretty bizarre because the pillow didn't really fit in with the crime scene. Everything else in the room was thrown around and out of place and in utter disarray except this clean pillow that was like placed underneath her head. Heather had been stabbed multiple times and beaten. She also had been strangled with an extension cord. There was no signs that it was anything other than a robbery except for that pillow underneath her head, which made them think that this was personal attack and it was somebody that she knew, also because they were able to get into the apartment. Perhaps she let them in because she knew them. Because the pillow really don't make no damn sense. Like, I don't get it. Somebody explain to me. I don't get it. You out here killing people, stabbing them, strangling them. I can't even speak. Strangling them with extension cords, but then you pop their head up on a pillow. As you can imagine, her family, her parents were mortified when they found this out. They were absolutely devastated that that this happened to their daughter. You know, they knew that she had been going through stuff while she was out there, but for this to happen, it was just too much. Heather's body was taken to the coroner's office for medical examination. They also ran a rape kit on her and nothing came back. investigators issued a be on the lookout alert for Heather's car. They described her vehicle as a 10-year-old Chevrolet Muze with a Pennsylvania license plate. They used the NCIC database, and this is a national database. The NCIC stands for National Crime Information Center. This is where all stolen items are stored. This database also was connected to the FBI, so the FBI was also able to run searches on this. So they listed Heather's car, they listed her camera, and all the items that were there, the TV, everything that had been stolen, her wallet, hoping that something would come back. Perhaps someone saw her vehicle, maybe someone found her wallet or something like that, something that could give them more information about what happened to Heather that night. The forensic medical examiner examined all the wounds on Heather's body. He found that Heather had 40 wounds in total, and he measured each one of those wounds. Now, this medical examiner, he did something called acetate tracing. It's pretty much where he would lay a piece of tape onto the body and then trace the outline of the wound onto tape using a marker. I've never heard of this technique before, so it's relatively new to me, but he described it as acetate tracing. Do your thing, Mr. Medical examiner. Based on the decomposition of the body, the medical examiner found that Heather had been dead for at least a week. He also found that there were several different injuries that had happened after Heather had died, so she wasn't even alive while she was still receiving these injuries. It became apparent to the medical examiners that there had been 3 different methods of killing. So I don't know, maybe he tried hitting her, it didn't work, so he tried strangling her, he tried stabbing her, maybe he just tried a bunch of different ways to kill her because he couldn't figure out how to do it. So would this mean that he was not really, or whoever, he or she, whoever the perpetrator is, would this mean that they were not, maybe they weren't really skilled at this? Maybe this was like their first time, maybe this wasn't something that they normally did. Forensic scientists also found a footprint on Heather's shirt, like right in the middle of her chest, as well as knife marks on the back of her neck behind her ear. This led them to believe that during the act, the perpetrator was trying to subdue her. A forensic pathologist also ran a rape kit on her, like I told you guys earlier, but the results came back and there was no sign of sexual assault. There was signs that this person most likely knew her because of the care, but then there was also more evidence that this person just came to rob her, like a random robbery. It was weird. It was really weird. While going over the evidence, investigators realized something else. The pillow that was placed underneath Heather's head had no blood on it, which meant that most likely he didn't use it in the process of killing Heather. So he had placed it under her head after she was dead. In random attacks like this, where the perpetrator does not know the victim, you won't see something like this. Investigators also found several different evidential clues that would point them to Heather's killer. Amongst everything else, they also found blood droplets in the bathroom near the sink, as well as in the kitchen on the floor. It was evident that Heather's killer had tried to clean up the crime scene, but crime scene investigators said, not today. And they brought in a chemical called amido black. Amido black is a protein staining reagent that is commonly used in the enhancement and visualization of bloodstain pattern evidence. Now it's time to go into the palette. But anyway, back to the story. So dramatic. I've waited all of 3 weeks to do that. You have no idea. So the crime scene investigators sprayed this amido black onto the floors in the bathrooms and in the kitchen. Almost immediately after spraying the amido black, shoe print impressions of a size 11 athletic shoe appeared. Forensic scientists compared the shoe prints they found on the floor to the shoe print that they found on Heather's shirt, and it was a match. Whoever had been walking throughout the home had also stepped their foot in Heather's chest. Guys, I do want to take the time to remind you that I know we all love true crime and we consume it's not opious, it's copious. So one of y'all corrected me before. Copious amounts of this type of content. But please guys, please try to balance it out with something nice to watch, something more upbeat and uplifting. I just want to remind you guys of that because yeah, it can really take a toll on you. At this point, investigators are thinking this is definitely the bad guy. This whoever shoe print this is, it's definitely him. And so they begin to look into Heather's background. They start talking to her friends, her family members, her acquaintances, anyone that knew Heather. And Heather had a lot of friends, you guys, because she was really popular. A lot of people liked her. She was very talented. And she was a fun, outgoing, loving person. So yeah, she made a lot of friends. Now, finding the killer amongst a group like this could prove to be a bit difficult just because there are so many characters around her. I mean, she worked in a restaurant, which meant she was probably talking to people and meeting people there. You know, when you're in the entertainment industry, you go to parties sometimes or gatherings or whatever, shindigs, and you'll meet people there. So yeah. Police had their work cut out for them. Girl, I have so many veins in my eyelids. I'm like, why? Why is there so many veins in my eyelids? Like, do I need that amount of veinage in my eyelids? I don't know. God was funny when he created me. I could just tell you. Upon their investigation, police discovered that Heather did have an ex-boyfriend that she had recently broken up with, and he was in the Air Force. He was actually living on the Air Force base at the time. And they're not sure if the two of them had gotten back together, but Heather was definitely trying to work things out with this guy. Now, Heather's ex-boyfriend, his name was Jack Norton, and he was a pilot in the Air Force. The base that he was stationed at was very close to Heather. It was close to her apartment, so I mean, it was a possibility. Police were theorizing that possibly Heather had wanted to get back together with this guy. Perhaps they met up and decided to talk about things, and maybe they got into an argument. Things got bad, it turned a little domestic, and then he killed Heather. They weren't sure. So they needed to pay Jack Norton a little visit, and they did. They did. But first, they asked Jack's officials where he had been stationed on the week of Heather's murder. They found out that Jack had actually not been around during that time. He was stationed in Saudi Arabia, and so he was eliminated as a suspect. Unless homeboy has a magic carpet, he didn't do it. But then Heather's family came forward and told investigators that she had had some sort of issue with a guy at a Halloween party just a week before her murder. And that's one of the other reasons why she was wanting her mom to come down there, and she was upset when she called her on the phone because, yeah, this was going on, you know? Now, allegedly, she claimed that an Air Force captain named Robert Dolan had sexually assaulted her at this Halloween party. Now, according to Heather's mother, she recounted that Heather told her that she had been drinking a lot that night, and she actually drank more than she felt she should have, and she passed out, and that one of the guests at the party's husband sexually assaulted her, that when she woke up, she thought that he had her. Now, this captain, he had been in the Air Force for a really long time. He had been there for 17 years. So this was a real legit career for him, and this could really ruin things for his career, like for real. And he was married, he had children with his wife. So not only would this ruin his career, but it would ruin his family as well if something like this got out. So investigators started thinking, okay, this guy is a legit suspect that we can go off of, because this would be a motive for why he would want Heather dead. Investigators also began to look into Dolan's wife because they thought perhaps she may have known about it and she wouldn't want his career to be ruined. Maybe she was hiding it, or perhaps she murdered Heather. Maybe. They weren't sure. Although a size 11 is a big foot, doesn't seem like it fits her body shape. but you know, everybody has different body shapes. So they were thinking either Robert did this or his wife did it, or perhaps they did it together. They did find out that Heather actually never ended up making any sort of police report about the sex. But investigators wanted to talk to the two of them, so they did bring Captain Dolan and his wife in for questioning, and they fully cooperated with police. They actually gave their fingerprints and everything for analysis. Like, they didn't have a problem. They just gave it up easily. Should we do rhinestones? I feel like, I don't know why, but I'm feeling very much 6th grade jazz dance recital vibes. I don't know. You guys tell me. Okay, yeah. I like it actually. Like, I'm on a float in a parade and I'm just, yeah, it definitely brings me back. So investigators compared the latent prints they found at the crime scene to Captain Dolan's and his wife's fingerprints, and they didn't match. So they had no evidence at this point that either of them was at the crime scene that day. At this point, it's not her ex-boyfriend. It's not the guy that, you know, sexually her. It's not his wife. Who could it be? But then investigators turned their attention to a fourth suspect. His name was Chris Harkins. He had stayed with Heather in her apartment while on business in Myrtle Beach. But after interviewing Chris, police discovered that he and Heather were platonic friends. They didn't have any sort of sexual contact. They wasn't anything like that. They were strictly friends. And during the weekend when Heather had been murdered, Chris was actually 160 miles away in South Carolina, and they were able to confirm his alibi. Things were looking a little murky for investigators at this point because they had no solid suspects, no solid evidence tying anybody to anything. So it was just like all over the place until they got an unsuspected phone call from an antique dealer. This antique dealer was 26 miles away in Pawleys Island in South Carolina. Now, according to this antique dealer, he and his wife had heard about Heather's case in the newspaper, the local newspaper. You guys remember that? I remember that. I was a child when there was newspapers, but I still remember newspapers. So he and his wife had read about Heather's case in the newspaper, and they had an experience with a shopper in their antique store that they thought could possibly have some sort of tie to Heather's case. They thought they had information that could possibly lead to the killer. According to this antique dealer, this customer came into the store and he was looking a bit scruffy. To say the least. They said that it looked like he had been in some sort of scuffle or fight or something like that. He was looking rough. And it just stood out to them because they don't see people like that much coming in there. And this guy, he had a camera that he was trying to actually pawn off. Now this is looking promising because we know that Heather had a camera that was stolen. And this guy is trying to pawn off a camera. Okay, so now the camera, you guys, was the same make and model as Heather's missing camera. They said that the customer's behavior was very odd. He was acting really suspicious. He seemed very desperate, and he was just like, hey, I'm really trying to get money. I need money. I don't have a lot of money. And like, he was just really pushing it. And they were like, no, we don't want this fucking camera, you know? And he got super aggravated and irate and just stormed off because he wasn't able to get them to purchase the camera. Like, he got upset. So they thought that that was strange. And in that moment, the antique dealer thought to himself, wow, that was bizarre. And it kind of matched what we saw in the newspaper. He decided to peer out of the window to see if he could see, like, he was just watching the customer. And as the customer left his shop, he decided to write down the customer's license plate number on the side of his coffee cup. I'm like, wow, dude. Thank God for this guy. Like, seriously. I mean, there are some true heroes in this world, I have to say. Like, just everyday fucking badass angels walking on earth. Really. I don't know. I've met some in my life who really helped me and saved me in some really crazy circumstances. Circumstances. I can't speak. It's been a while, you guys. They gave a description of the guy that they saw to the investigators. From the description that they gave to the police, investigators were able to get a sketch artist to draw up a composite of the suspect. They also ran the license plate number that the antique dealer gave them, and guess what, you guys? It matched. It was Heather Stigliano's car that guy was driving. This was a huge break in the case for investigators. They finally had enough evidence to link them back to a legit suspect. Investigators were super excited because they were thinking, this is definitely our guy. He has the camera, he has her car, he did this. And they were ready to pick his ass up, but they just didn't know where to find him. So they needed to do a little bit more work. They needed to find out who this guy was. So they took the composite and they sent it out to all the local news stations, to the newspaper, and they had his picture posted, plastered everywhere. And as a result of that, a local construction company in Myrtle Beach came forward and said that they recognized him, that they knew who this guy was, that he had actually worked for their company before in the past. Oh my God. They told investigators that the composite matched an employee of theirs named James Whipple, and that he had just stopped coming into work one week. He never called in, he never said anything, he just basically never came back into work. He quit. That's definitely suspicious. Like I said, there is those jobs though that make you like, okay, I'm just done with it. I ain't gonna say nothing. I'm just not coming back. So I understand that. I understand him on that part, but like, was this the case? Could this have been the case? Or could it be that he didn't come back because he murdered Heather and he was on the run? I think that's more likely. And the thing was, you guys, that James, he had disappeared from work on the same week that Heather had been murdered, so it did match the timelines. Upon further investigation into James Whipple's background, police discovered that he did have a criminal past. He was 38 years old. He had a record in 4 different states. He had been arrested for grand larceny, I think, petty theft, breaking and entering, burglary, which is consistent with what happened to Heather's apartment with the crime scene, of course. And he even had DUIs and stuff like that. Like, this guy had a record that was like very long, but it was of petty little things like theft. He also had unauthorized use of a vehicle, which obviously he clearly didn't learn his lesson because he's still doing it, and he stole Heather's car and he did it again. Like, this is, I just don't understand why criminals keep getting let out that do the same things. Like, if we see that they have a criminal record dating back to whenever when, why are we letting them out? Why are we giving them why? Obviously they've chosen the criminal lifestyle. They've chosen it. You know he's gonna commit the same crime again. He's done it like 50 times. Do we need him to like actually murder somebody? I don't understand why something horrible has to happen first before something can be done about this person who's clearly on the wrong path and who's clearly committed multiple crimes. Like, lock his ass up. Anyway, too much talking. What's going on here? Are you dying on me? You're dying on me. 6 days after police found out this information, they found James in Florida driving Heather's car. And they were super ecstatic because this was a huge win for them. They now not only had the suspect, but they also had a huge chunk of missing evidence, which was Heather's car. But what investigators couldn't figure out at the time was the connection between Heather and James. Like, how did James know Heather? With further digging, they discovered that James was actually friends with Heather's friend Chris, the guy that was staying with her at the time when he was on business and stuff. And James had met Heather once at her apartment, and that was the only interaction they had with one another was the one time that he had met her when he came to see Chris. I mean, be careful who you let up in your house. That's all I got to say, girl. Now, inside of Heather's car, investigators discovered what they described as a treasure trove of evidence. Crime scene investigators started on the outside of the vehicle and worked their way into the inside of the vehicle. And underneath the seat, they found a serrated knife. They found a pair of men's athletic running shoes. They were like white. And they also found a broken iron. They also found clothes in the car that were blood stained. So it's not looking too good. Definitely not. They sent the knife over to a forensic pathologist, and he discovered that the blades on the knife matched some of the cut wounds that was on the back of Heather's neck behind her ear. Once he realized that the blade shapes were very consistent with the markings on Heather, he then measured the size of the blades to the size of the markings or the size of the wound on Heather's neck, and they were the exact same, you guys. The forensic pathologist also compared the clothes iron that they found to the wounds on Heather's body, and he found that they were consistent with a number of wounds on her. This told them that not only was the knife used to murder Heather, but the iron was also used in the crime as well, confirming what they had already suspected, which was that someone had used multiple ways of killing Heather. So then forensic scientists started to piece together the iron. They wanted to see if the black plastic pieces that they found near Heather's body were also a part of the iron. So they began to reconstruct the iron using these black pieces, and they began gluing the pieces of the iron back together. After numerous attempts and failing, they were finally able to reconstruct the iron, and all the plastic pieces fit perfectly, as if they didn't have enough evidence. Next, they analyzed the athletic shoes that they found in the car, and they were a size 11 shoe, just like the one found at the crime scene, you guys. But that wasn't enough. They need to be sure that this was the shoe that was at the crime scene. So they used a standard red fingerprint dusting powder to figure this out, and they dust the bottom of one of the shoes. After that, they stepped onto a transparency to make the impression. The size and tread pattern of the shoe was the exact same. Also, the wear patterns in the shoe, known as accidental characteristics, were also the same. This is what they used to determine that it was in fact James's shoe and nobody else's, because nobody else could make those indentations in that shoe except for James, because these markings are very specific to the individual wearing the shoe. They also came to the conclusion that this was in fact the shoe to create the impression on Heather's shirt. I mean, they're figuring it out, boo. Look how cute that is. And when they test the clothing in the car, they found it had Heather's DNA all over it. So it was Heather's blood. Finally, they had the solid evidence that they needed to make an arrest, and they arrested James Whipple. They brought him in for questioning, and shocker, he actually begins to confess. He doesn't lie at all, you guys. He's like, yep, I did it. I killed her. I have an issue. I have a problem. He said that he needed money for drugs, that he had a drug problem, and that's the reason why he did it. He said that he didn't initially want to kill her. He just wanted her to give him some money, and he thought that, you know, he would steal this money off of her because he knew that she worked in a restaurant, so she made tips. That means she would have some cash on her, and he was just looking to grab the cash. He admitted on tape that he had a crack cocaine problem, and he was very forthcoming, you guys. Actually, when listening to his confession, I was like, okay. I was so surprised. As he said in his interview, it was the dang crack cocaine. It did it to him. He said, you know, the drugs was really hard and that it controlled him, and that when you on those type of drugs that you do crazy things, and it made him basically go insane. He also requested that they give him the death penalty. He said that what he did was wrong, and he absolutely believe that he should pay the price for it. I think honestly that this is the easy way out, because he probably didn't want to spend the rest of his life in prison, which he absolutely should. Like, obviously, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm one of those people who I can't be locked up, you know? So I hope we're all one of those people, but it's way worse being locked up in a place for the rest of your life and not being able to go anywhere than it is, you know, the death penalty. Plus, I'm a strong believer that hell is on earth. It ain't in death. I'm just a strong believer of that. So I would love to see his rot in prison, to be honest with you. It is crazy how James was trying to, like, really, he was really gung-ho about this death penalty. I mean, he was talking to the media, telling the news outlets, like, listen, I did something really terrible and the family needs to, you know, be able to get justice and move on with their lives. Like, I deserve the freaking death penalty. Like, he was really out here pushing his death penalty. James Whipple's family did confirm that James had a terrible problem with drugs, and so they weren't surprised to hear this. This is the reason why he had all these petty thefts and stuff, because it really ruined his life. They found out that he had a really bad anger problem and that he also had lost his entire family, including his wife, everybody, because he had this issue with drugs. He lost jobs for this issue with drugs. Like, he pretty much lost it all. Prosecutors believed on the night of Heather's murder that James came to her place. He was looking for money because he knew that she was a waitress. She had this cash probably laying around. When he got to her place, he asked her if Chris was home. She said no. So then he asked to use the phone to call Chris. This is when Heather let him inside of her apartment to call Chris. Now, ladies and gentlemen, but ladies, don't let nobody in, especially if you live alone. So she invites James into her home to use her phone to call Chris, who is not home at the time. I mean, if he's not home, he needs to come back another time. You ain't coming inside. Like, no. She goes into the kitchen to show him where the phone is so they can call Chris. And as soon as she turns around, high as an MFing kite on drugs, he was desperate for money. And so he grabbed the knife out of the drawer and he started to threaten her with it and tell her, you know, I just want the money. Just give me money. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want the money. Somewhere in between this time, they believed, they were not sure if Heather resisted him or what happened, but there was a struggle and he ended up having to actually kill her. Various methods in which he used to try to kill her was bizarre, but I think the knife was just originally to kind of threaten her to get the money, and it probably scraped her on the back of the neck just to let her know he was for real. I think that when he realized that there was going to be a struggle, he hit her over the head with the iron. Once she was unconscious and he had ransacked the place, he probably realized that he couldn't leave her alive because she had seen his face, and he went back to strangle her with the clothes iron. That's my best bet, and that's what they believed happened that night. They believed he washed off in the bathroom. That is how the blood got there. After that, he tried to clean up the blood he had left behind. He took all of her valuable belongings, anything he could sell and make money from. He also took her car, because now he has a getaway car and he could probably sell that as well. And he jetted out of there. But actually, Whipple corrected this story. He said that he hadn't cleaned up behind himself that day. He actually came back the next day to clean up his tracks. That's crazy. He said he used a towel to get in. That's why there was no fingerprints on the door. And he kind of wiped away all of his prints. Before he left on that second day is when he placed the pillow underneath Heather's head. This was a huge indicator to investigators that he knew her. Thanks to forensic science and some good police work, James Whipple was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He did not get the death sentence he was looking for. I'm so happy. What did you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, you can check out my last episode. I'll leave it linked on the screen right here or right here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Please share because it really helps me out. And I'll see you guys next week with another Forensic Friday, Saturday, or Sunday episode. Bye. Lucy also says bye. She's just napping.